Mike, early on we spoke about this whole prominence given to the whole question of origins and the tension that it's caused between so-called science and the Genesis account of creation and so on. Why this prominence in your understanding, and what is the significance, and should it be as prominent as it is?
I think it's overstated, the importance of origins, and I think we need to go back to the centrality of the cross of Christ. You know, Jesus says at one point in John chapter 13, "Now is the Son of Man seen for who he is, and God seen for who he is in him." Now, what is Jesus talking about there? What important event is he talking about that would show who he is and who God is? And that event is actually the cross. People will talk as if evolution is the greatest threat to the Christian faith. And that's giving it a prominence it doesn't have, actually.
Or deserves. I agree with you, yeah.
The greatest threat to God is not evolution, it's actually the cross. If you think about it.
Explain it.
Well, for instance, one problem that people have with evolution is that it requires the death of millions and millions of organisms, suffering and death.
Okay, which is contrary to Romans, eh?
How could God allow all the suffering if he's going to use evolution to create?
Sure.
But if there's a problem there, there's even a greater problem. The person of Jesus dying on the cross. Animals are certainly innocent because they don't make moral choices. But here's this one, the Son of God, who did make moral choices and always chose the good. He was sinless. Mm-hmm. And this one is the Son of God. Mm-hmm. Son of the Father. And yet God sends him to die a terrible death.
Sure.
How does that fit in with God's character as a loving and powerful God?
That he would allow his Son to die on the cross. That's the rhetorical question you're asking.
Yes.
Okay.
And in a sense, God doesn't answer the question for us. But the cross, this terribly significant event, which at the face of it, it looks like God is letting his only begotten Son die this terrible death. Jesus says, my God, why have you abandoned me?" We say God is one who sticks closer to a brother, and yet Jesus, his Son, could say, "God has abandoned me."
Okay.
What is God doing there?
Okay.
There's a great mystery about the cross, Andre.
Okay.
And yet Christianity has survived the cross.
Okay, but I understand then, so you say really the world has this difficulty with all this death, decay and destruction which is inherent in the evolutionary model, the evolutionary scheme of things, and yet he doesn't seem to have a problem with God, the Son of God, dying a terrible death on the cross. Okay. And that's a dichotomy which you feel is something which is irresolvable and which the world has discounted on the one hand, and yet it clings to this argument on the other hand.
Well, the problem is most acute for God. The problem with evil and suffering, I think, is most acute for God at the cross. Because here is a perfectly innocent one that's died.
Okay.
And yet God has survived the cross. In fact, he used the cross to demonstrate his love and power and wisdom and justice. So evolution is a piece of cake compared to the cross.